100 billion marks for a loaf of bread. What caused the record hyperinflation in Germany at the beginning of the last century? $10 billion for a loaf of bread. Those were the prices in Zimbabwe in 2008. However, the dollars were not American, but Zimbabwean. In the 2000s, this African republic experienced one of the record hyperinflations in the history of the global economy.
There were situations where we dealt with trillions of dollars, then quintillions, and then sextillions. It was endless zeros.
What is a quintillion? It's a number with 18 zeros. Such numbers are more often used by astronomers, not economists. For example, the diameter of our galaxy, the Milky Way, is about 1 quintillion kilometers. A sextillion is even larger. It's a unit with 21 zeros. In 2008, the inflation rate in Zimbabwe was measured with this number 89 sextillion %. But what happened to this once prosperous country? The story of this economic disaster began in the late 90s when President Robert Mugabe implemented land reform. He expelled almost all white farmers from the country and transferred their lands to the local population, mostly to his supporters.
I was given 30 days to leave the farm, or else we were threatened. One of my friends was killed.
The consequences of Mugabe's reform were catastrophic. After the expropriation of farmland, Zimbabwe's main economic pillar, agriculture, fell into decline.
They didn't have enough experience in handling agricultural lands, and most importantly, they lacked the desire.
A prolonged crisis began in the country. Food production was cut in half. The banking sector collapsed, industrial enterprises went bankrupt and closed down. Only unemployment and prices were rising.
In fact, Zimbabwe has enormous economic potential, fertile soils, platinum mines, diamonds. But Robert Mugabe's policies plunged the republic into chaos.
To cover government expenses and replenish the budget, Mugabe started printing money. Unbacked banknotes were being issued by the ton. This led to an avalanche-like increase in inflation. The peak of the crisis occurred in November 2008. Prices were doubling every hour and a half. Zimbabwean dollars became so devalued that they were worth less than the paper used to print them. The authorities of the republic even passed a law prohibiting the use of the national currency as a means of personal hygiene.
To go to the store, you needed to have a huge sports bag or even a traditional cart, yes, in which you had to bring cash just to buy a minimal set of groceries.
In 2009, the authorities of Zimbabwe turned off the printing press, abandoned the national currency, and switched to US dollars, British pounds, and South African rand. This allowed the economy to stabilize a bit. However, not for long. In recent years, inflation in the republic began to rise again, and old banknotes with a denomination of 100 trillion Zimbabwean dollars are now in demand among numismatists. 100 trillion is not the largest denomination in the history of the economy. The record was set by the Hungarians. It's a banknote with a denomination of 1 sextillion pengo. That was the name of the Hungarian currency from 1927 to 1946. The term hyperinflation was first used in Germany after World War I. The prefix hyper means that prices are rising rapidly not just by multiples, but by orders of magnitude.
At the peak,
before World War I, Germany's economy and industry were among the strongest in the world, so Germans had no doubt that the empire would emerge victorious from the conflict. To finance military expenses, the Reichsbank started printing money and abandoned the gold backing of the mark. The Germans planned to cover their internal debts after the war at the expense of the defeated countries. But Germany lost.
According to the Treaty of Versailles, Germany
paid the first installment, 2 billion marks, after which the money ran out. The government declared default and stated that there was no more money to pay reparations. In response, France and Belgium decided to take what was owed by force. Their troops occupied the industrial heart of Germany, the Ruhr Valley, and took control of the mines and factories.
The Germans decided they needed to resist this situation. Organized strikes at the enterprises. But the thing is, during strikes, they need to be funded because people won't work without receiving some money. Expenses increased. The inflationary spiral continued to spin further.
The printing press worked non-stop, but the issuance of money still couldn't keep up with the rising prices. Initially, prices doubled every 49 hours.
It's hard to believe, but prices were increasing by 100% every 15 seconds. Workers began receiving their wages first every week, then every day, and eventually every hour.
By November 1923, hyperinflation had reached record levels. The exchange rate of the mark had plummeted to 4 trillion per dollar. The national currency began to be used as wallpaper. A loaf of bread cost almost 100 billion marks. The Germans were only able to stabilize the economy after a currency reform, and thanks to the goodwill of the victors, they reduced the amount of reparations. Medieval states also faced inflation. Almost all European powers did. After the discovery of America, silver production increased by dozens of times. As a result, by the end of the 16th century, prices for food and industrial goods in the Old World had increased by about 4 times. And at the beginning of the 18th century, a serious crisis nearly collapsed the economy of France. The person responsible for the upheavals was this man, the Scottish financier John Law. In 1716, John Law came to Paris at the invitation of the regent, Duke Philippe of Orleans. Orleans asked Law for help to stabilize the French economy. It was experiencing a crisis due to the debts left by the late king. Law proposed to the regent to open a bank and issue paper banknotes that could be used alongside metal coins.
Initially, Law's bank was private. It provided many services for free, for which other banks charged fees. Law also promised to pay out money on demand. One day, 5 million were deposited in his bank, and later they demanded to withdraw them. The Duke of Orleans helped by ordering the Ministry of Finance to give Law the necessary amount.
Soon, John Law's private bank became a state bank and was renamed the Royal Bank, and its founder was appointed as the Minister of Finance of France. In addition, Law acquired the Mississippi Company in America, which was involved in trade and mineral extraction in the New World.
People began to invest in it, once again thanks to John Law's marketing talents, who promoted all these shares and primarily advertised Louisiana. Everyone believed that there was a huge amount of tobacco, spices, all the most expensive goods, and, of course, gold. But the thing is, Louisiana is not such a wealthy state, but no one knew that at the time.
The main problem was that neither the banknotes of the Royal Bank nor the shares of the Mississippi Company were backed by gold. Major investors realized that sooner or later the financial bubble would burst and began exchanging their papers for coins. Surprisingly, at one time, inflation even affected such a prosperous country as Canada. After World War II, the government lifted price controls. As a result, they began to rise. The most upset were the children. They protested against the increase in chocolate prices from 5 to 8 cents. In April 1947, young Canadians organized a strike with the slogan, "Don't buy chocolate for 8 cents." Additionally, the school children called for a boycott of candy stores, which caused revenue to drop by 80%.